back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. As always, I'm Stef Albiero. I'm here with a special guest today. It's not Alex. He did not get a complete makeover. It is Mike Liu, an OG friend of the show, guy I've been following for a long time. Dynasty genius. I think this guy's in like 1,000 different Dynasty leagues. Mike, appreciate you joining. I'm so hyped for this episode. We're going to talk some Dynasty today. I know there's a loaded playoff slate coming up. We got Rams, Packers, Ravens, Bills on Saturday. We got Browns, Chiefs, my Brownies. I'm still on cloud nine after that playoff dub. And then Bucks, Saints to finish off the weekend. But Mike, how you doing, man? You pumped?
Doing good, man. I'm happy to be on the show. Thanks for having me. We were just talking about this before we hit record, but this is the first pod I ever did. This is the first one. You guys had me on as a guest. I think it was after I launched that regression thread, the TD regression thread on running backs.
Yep.
You guys DM me. I'm like, I have no idea who these guys were, but you probably had barely any idea who I was, and we kind of just linked up. And that was a fun time. And then since then, I think I hopped on for like another rookie wide receiver episode, if I remember correctly. So this is the third time. So a friend of the show, big fan of what you guys have been doing, and just I'm just chilling, man. I'm just chilling. This is Dynasty off season. This is where the money's made. This is where the research begins. This is where we really do the grind. This is my favorite time of the season because I don't have to talk about games every week. I can talk about whatever the hell I want, So it's a good time. And you guys are getting into, I guess, your first Dynasty off season. So you'll kind of see too, like on the content side, it's free reign, man. You can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm loving it. From a content, production standpoint, Dynasty is definitely where it's at. That's where we've been pointing, at least in terms of directions where we're going. Been primarily redraft guys. Started a couple Dynasty leagues, both as commissioner and joined a few, took over some orphans, and it's been an absolute blast. Loving the trading. Guys, if you aren't in a Dynasty league, I know most of the guys who watch us are just pure redraft guys or maybe even just general NFL fans. But if you want to start, making predictions on players, put your money where your mouth is as a NFL fan. Dynasty leagues are where it's at. We're going to get into a bunch of different topics today. Now, Mike, I know you do a ton of your own research. I was whipping out the Excel sheets before we jumped on, so I got a little bit of mine as well. But before we jump into any of these topics, anything you want to plug, guys, go follow him on Bunkbed Breakdowns. But Mike, anything new in the works? Obviously, follow you on Twitter. I'll put the link in there as well.
Yeah, no, nothing to plug. I mean, just here to talk shop. I mean, just follow us on YouTube. We got the Bunkbed channel. If you want to talk shit to me on Twitter, hit me up. I'm always responding. You got questions, hit me up in the DMs. I try to respond whenever I can. But yeah, not much to plug, man. Let's get it.
Awesome. So first topic here, one of the most common questions for Dynasty noobs. I would still classify myself as, an up and coming, guys moving up the ranks, but still a noob in a lot of aspects. One of the biggest things that we got asked after our Dynasty mock, our first Dynasty mock that we just put out, guys, go check that out if you have not yet. But one of the biggest questions was from other newer Dynasty players is, why are you going running back and quarterback in the first round over wide receivers? Typically you think of wide receivers as more safer, long-term assets, guys that are going to be able to stay at their peak of production for a much longer period of time. Running backs, we all know, right? They peak at age 25. They can be easily replaced. They're injury prone. So let's kind of talk through why you want to go running back and quarterback in a Dynasty league, much like a redraft league.
Yeah, I mean, I think, conventional wisdom, like back in the day, if you talk to all the OGs and whatnot, would have told you that, yeah, you got to go, wide receiver because they're safer, they got more longevity, yada, 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 whatever reason, and that could totally work, right? I've done the drafts where I've gone that path and it's worked, but here's the problem. You need running backs to win the league. So you can last as long as you want, but, we're trying to get a championship, and, Dynasty, people like to think of it as a marathon. I think of it as like a series of short sprints in season followed by a break in the off season. And that's how I think about my teams, because if you don't have running backs, you're just not going to win the championship. And all we care about is winning the championship. So, and all the good running backs and all the good quarterbacks go in the early rounds, right? And people know those positions have more value because the wide receivers are deep. It's deeper than it's ever been. If you look at wide receiver scoring, there just aren't as many traditional massive like target hog guys outside of the Devontae Adams, and then, Michael Thomas was hurt this year, but that type of wide receiver is very rare. So not having one of them is not necessarily that big of a deal because not many people have them, but having a bunch of wide receivers in like that low end wide receiver 1 to high wide receiver to low wide receiver 2 range is actually totally fine to build your team around because the point differential, the points per game that advances you're getting from wide receivers is just not that big. So even though they last longer, their weekly advantage that they provide you just isn't big enough to matter. So you got to go for positions that are scarce and positions that matter. And, from that perspective, I like to go running backs early most of the time, just so I can get like that stud workhorse running back. And then the other part of it is like, I feel like I'm pretty good at identifying wide receiver talent and identifying wide receiver trends. And I'm really good at hitting in that next tier of wide receiver before they become the first tier. So like
Your boy T. Higgins.
Yeah, T. Higgins. I remember I was on the episode. I told you I love T. Higgins. And, he's kind of that next guy where he's still in that like second, third tier where he's like a low end wide receiver 1, which is what most people think of him as, maybe even a higher end wide receiver 2. He has not made that leap yet into like the top 5, right? So you don't need to pay top 5 price for him. Like last year for me, that was like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Calvin Ridley. I targeted all those guys. They were going like the 3rd or 4th round of startup drafts. And then now if you look at them, they're all like wide receiver 1s and they're going the 1st, 2nd round. So that's like the money maker for Dynasty is being able to hit that tier of wide receivers before they become the top tier. And that's like just bread and butter. What I do in Dynasty is I'm always trading down out of those top first round. Like whenever someone is a Dynasty wide receiver 1, whenever you see that on Twitter, that guy's going on the block on all of my teams. And I'm going to try and trade down into a lesser wide receiver that I think has that potential plus another asset.
There's just so much talent at the position. And when you even look at it from the top performing running backs versus wide receivers just way less top heavy. I mean, the difference between just wide receiver 12 and 24 is 2 points on a points per game basis, right? So you got to get those stud guys. You got to get the ceiling. And guys right now that you can get in startup drafts at like 4th, 5th, 6th round, you can get T. Higgins, you can get Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper, still young guys, ascending guys, proven guys as well. Guys with many more top 12 and top 24 seasons left in the tank. And I was looking at over the last 5 seasons, comparing just RB1s to wide receiver 1s. There is not a single season where the wide receiver 1s combined, just their average, outscored the RB1s on a points per game average. So even if you look at that and then say, okay, there's guys like CMC, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, these extreme outliers, super high points per game running backs. Even when you compare to the RB1 to the wide receiver 1, still a huge gap there. And there's still a huge gap when you look at every running back to wide receiver, the RB2 to the wide receiver 2, and so on, all the way down until about 8, RB8, wide receiver 8, that gets a little bit closer. But those top guys, man, there's just a super premium on those names.
Yep. I mean, are you familiar with the concept wins above replacement? There's like a bunch of different guys that calculate it differently, but like basically it tries to measure the impact of like a player. And what you'll see, like this year was actually a little bit of an outlier because we had some pretty monster wide receiver seasons, right? From Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Stephon Diggs. But normally like what you see is like out of the top 12, like wins above replacement, like they're all running backs. And then like, in 2019, Lamar Jackson was there just because of how fucking good he was. But yeah, when you just look at the impact on a per game basis, because like no matter how you play it, redraft, dynasty, doesn't matter. It's still a week to week game. You got to win your week to week matchups. They just don't make as big of an impact. And like there's just so many of them. And like if we look at this incoming class, just another talented, like studly talented class. I mean, if I were to just go off prospects alone, the 2021 class has better prospects than 2020. The 2021 is better than 2020. Obviously, now we've seen 2020 play out, and it has basically been one of the greatest wide receiver and running back classes we've ever had in terms of talent. So I don't know if it'll live up to that again, but just from a purely prospect analysis perspective, I really do think the 2021 class is better. So you're looking at another influx of talent. So you're going to be looking at like 30, 40 like wide receivers deep in terms of like players that you really like and are comfortable with. There's like way more options there than running backs. And look, I get it. Running backs don't last as long, but I'm a volume trader. There's no player that like sits on my team for more than like 2 to 3 years. So I really don't care how long they last. If they last 10 years, 5 years, doesn't matter to me because I probably would have flipped that team over by then. So, if you take that type of approach, like that's why it's like I don't really care if I have to hold the guy. If I can only hold him for 3 years, 4 years, like it doesn't really matter to me. I'm just trying to trade out and trade in on peaks and valleys that I think make sense.
So let's get into some individual players. I always see you on the Market Watch Mondays. You're giving us the strategy, you're giving us the breakdown, you're giving us the process behind a lot of trade moves, player values, when to buy, when to sell, when to hold. But I want to get you in on some specific player analysis, talk about some of the guys, the up and coming exciting running backs from the 2021 class. I know you've been a big JK Dobbins guy from day one. I remember you were all in on him in rookie drafts before he even entered the league. And then even in redraft, you were like, if there's a guy that you're going to smash on who could jump his incumbent starter, it's definitely going to be Dobbins over Ingram. But as far as, dynasty startups right now, I'm seeing Dobbins go like early second round. Is that about where you have him as well?
Yeah, I'm like, if you look at the way I rank, I'm like usually ahead of where the market is. So I'm going to give a big bump to young, productive rookie running backs. So I have JK Dobbins at looks like 13th overall in a super flex league. 13th overall in a super flex league. Is it super flex? Actually, no, in a single QB league. So that would put him in like the second round, basically. Early second round is where I would have him. And I'd be comfortable taking a lot of the running backs there. Like you'll see DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, JK Dobbins, like back to back to back to back in my rankings towards that end there.
I mean, since the bye week in week 7 for the Ravens, where they really started to move on from Mark Ingram, he was a healthy scratch for a couple of those weeks, didn't even see above 20% snap share. Dobbins was averaging 12 carries and 1 target a game. That's the scary thing for me for Dobbins. I love Dobbins. I would take him. I just did on our Dynasty mock, did take him early second round, right in kind of like that Ezekiel Elliott range. Guys were going for some of the more proven production. I was going for the ascent of JK Dobbins, but does that scare you at all, that lack of carry volume? I mean, even when Mark Ingram in 2019 was, the full, stud there with Gus Edwards, just him and Edwards, he was only seeing 13 and a half attempts per game. How does that scare you, at least in terms of the floor for JK Dobbins?
It just means that he doesn't have like that top 5 upside, and, understandably so. I don't have him ranked there, right? He's not going to, I'm not expecting him to be like a workhorse volume, but what he is he's like super efficient, and he's on a high scoring offense, and he's got a decent amount of goal line work. So that's exciting. And then, should they ever move on from Gus or something like that, I think he presents like that 2K rushing upside. He's someone in the offense where landing the right opportunity will give him that upside. But he's the thing that concerns me with Dobbins, like he's not going to get like targets, right? Like Lamar Jackson just doesn't throw to running backs. So, in that sense, he's kind of like a mini Derrick Henry almost, even though he's very capable of taking catches, taking passes. He's just not going to get that type of volume. So that's what concerns me more. His like week to week, volatility is probably going to be more TD dependent, but like they're also like a really good team and they just run a crap load. So, I always say this, like being part of a committee, not all committees are created equal. Like being part of a San Francisco committee, part of a Baltimore committee is very different than being part of like a, I guess like, I don't know who else doesn't run that much, like the Chiefs committee, for example, right? So it's always like those types of considerations. But at the end of the day, in Dynasty, you're trying to buy in on talent, right? Talent is going to dictate everything in the long run, and situations change, right? We don't know if Gus Edwards will be here in 2022, right? We don't know if, what they're going to do for 2022 and beyond. Like maybe they bring in a different offensive coordinator, someone other than Greg Roman, maybe someone that does give them that workhorse. So you really want to just get into that talent. And, the talent to me is there. The fit is perfect with Lamar Jackson. So, the question is, when does that volume come? Is it 2021? Is it 2022? He's still young. So like at some point in the first 4 to 5 prime years of his life, I do think he's going to see like that 15 to 17 touch per week volume. And if you do give JK Dobbins 15 to 17 touches a week, you're going to get a middling to top like running back production.
I think he more than makes up for that lack of passing work with that touchdown upside. I mean, scored 7 touchdowns in his last 6 games. Like you can't find a game that didn't have a touchdown. You got to look back, almost half the season. And definitely was the clear goal line back. We saw that in the playoff game against Buffalo. So I'm with you there. Folks will see that as like a way that his floor drops insanely low, but I think his floor is what we see like in the game against Dallas, where was it the super high ceiling, weak defense where Dobbins ended up coming out there, 11 carries for 71 yards and a touchdown, only 13 fantasy points. But like, if that's the floor for JK Dobbins in this offense, the offense that's going to run the ball every single year more than any other offense, I'll take that every day of the week. And who knows, man, maybe free agent Gus Edwards is out of there. There's a non-zero chance. I think that could happen. I doubt it will. But Gus Edwards seeing another 9 attempts per game. Could you imagine if Dobbins got another 9 attempts per game on top of the 13 or whatever that he's going to get with Mark Ingram out of there, assuming they don't sign him back, even if they're not going to sign him back. They're not going to sign him back at this point. Yeah. Another rookie running back I want to talk about. You mentioned him. This has been a my guy since day one because he torched my Louisville Cardinals for years in the ACC. Cam Akers, absolute stud. A lot of guys, again, redraft were so disappointed by Akers. He burned their rosters, but dynasty-wise, man, this kid is an absolute machine. We even just saw it there in the playoffs, putting the Rams on his back, 28 carries, 131 yards, a touchdown, 2 receptions, and had the longest reception for the Rams in that game with a 44-yard catch. He's the second youngest skill position player in the NFL. And when you think about it that way, it's just what more could you want out of a dynasty running back? But as far as startups go right now, mid-second is typically where I'm seeing him go. In savvy leagues, I have seen some where he's fallen to the 3rd round, maybe early 3rd round. Are you willing to smash on him in that mid to early 2nd round?
Oh, I mean, I'll smash on him at the if it's a 1 QB league. I mean, I'm smashing on him in the 1st round, top of the 2nd round. I haven't back to back with JK Dobbins, DeAndre Swift. Like, I've been a Cam Akers stan for a long, long time. Going back. He was one of the first Devy players I ever drafted. I just I love serial winners, right? And if you look at Cam Akers, that's exactly what he is. If you look at his high school stats, it's video game. He wasn't even a running back in high school. He was a quarterback, dual threat quarterback. And he was going into college, coming out as a quarterback. He was the 2nd best running back in the nation, ranked behind Najee Harris. So that's the lineage of Cam Akers. And he came out, broke out as a true freshman, just balled out, had a down season in his sophomore year, and then bounced right back last year. I'm a big fan of Cam Akers. And even when I drafted him this year, I kind of gave people a warning, like, hey, you're going to have to be patient with Cam Akers. This guy is incredibly raw. He's only been playing running back since college, right? So, he's still learning the game, but the raw ability and the raw natural talent has always been there. And I said, this guy has as high of a ceiling as anyone in this class, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if 2 years down the road he was running back 1 of this entire class. So what you're seeing late in the season is that some of that playing out. So from week 13 to about week 17, including the playoffs, I started tracking percentage of opportunities, and I define opportunities as carries plus targets. So week 13, 78%, week 14, 94%, week 15, 88%, week 17, 88%, playoffs, 96%. So the workhorse Cam Akers has arrived, right? And for those that are still trying to hang on to Darrell Henderson, they talk about the injury. I get it. He got injured week 17, but week 13, 14, 15, he was healthy, and he was seeing less than 3 touches a game. So this is Cam Akers' backfield. The Rams told you all they wanted to tell you when they took him in the 2nd round, right? When you draft someone in the 2nd round, the prior guy you drafted in the 3rd round no longer matters. So I love Cam Akers. I think, in a super flex draft, I'd be taking him in like the top half of the 2nd round, but in a single QB, I'm happily smashing on him in the late 1st. And the last thing I'll say on him is, do you remember Miles Sanders' rise in 2019, right? The last 5 games, Miles Sanders, he exploded, right? And everyone fell in love with him. It's like, oh, this is the workhorse Miles Sanders we needed. Cam Akers was more impressive in his last 5 games than Miles Sanders. Like Miles Sanders, 2019, 28.8 opportunities, 105 yards from scrimmage, 5 yards per opportunity, or 5 yards per carry or per opportunity, I guess. And then Cam Akers, 25.4 opportunities per game. 122 yards from scrimmage and 4.81 yards per opportunity. So he's on nearly as efficient, but he's just on way more volume. And, Sean McVay has kind of shown you, like, this is the workhorse. This is the future. And, if anyone's still buying Darrell Henderson out there, man, dump that guy. Like, that is a roster clogger. Get a 3rd round pick, get a couple 4th, get something for him, because this is a Cam Akers show, and it's going to be wheels up for him going forward. I think he's in a really, really, really top end talent. And now that he's getting the volume, there's really not much to not like about him.
And we saw that the Rams in 2020, the run blocking O-line improved to a degree. They wanted to run the ball a lot more. They became a run-heavy team as opposed to asking Jared Goff to throw the ball 600 times. And we could look at the draft capital comparison with Henderson, and definitely I'll take that at face value. But, I mean, Henderson's never seen the type of usage that Cam Akers is already getting. So I'm with you 100%. So we've talked about two, kind of locked and loaded dynasty darlings. Let's get into a guy that there's a lot of uncertainty around. A.J. Dillon, Green Bay Packers running back, taken at the 230, so back of the second round in the 2019 draft. Guy's an absolute tank, 6 foot, 250, right under 23 years old right now. Showed some breakaway speed, but really wasn't used at all as a rookie until, he didn't have more than 5 carries and 25% of snaps until he ran wild against the Titans in that snow game, week 16, 60% of snaps, 21 carries, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 26 fantasy point outing. Welcome, A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon, you have arrived. Where are you with A.J. Dillon, though? With the contract situation up in the air with Aaron Jones, is this a guy you want to get in now before that value peaks? Because he's not a guy that I love as someone who really doesn't catch a lot of passes, really hasn't shown that he can do that, or that's a big part of his skill set.
Yeah, I was never an A.J. Dillon fan. I think he was probably one of my lowest ranked running backs coming into this class for some of the reasons you said. Like, one, he wasn't great at catching passes, but two, he just wasn't very elusive. Like, he's like a big, really big and fast and athletic guy, of course. And, people try and make the comp to Derrick Henry. I don't really know if that's the right comp, but I think, for him, if you are a believer, you absolutely have to buy right now. But if you're not, like, as we saw in the playoffs, right? Like, as we see, like, when the time comes, like when it's most important, like, I think we're going to see Aaron Jones there. So if Aaron Jones gets re-signed, then you just have a handcuff. And I'm not really in the business of paying up for handcuffs. But I'm not going to say, like, discount the performance, because he played really well. Even when I was watching the game, he was breaking tackles. He was doing a lot of stuff. Granted, it was against Tennessee defense and their buns, but at the end of the day, he still put on a show. So I'm not really, like, in a buy mode for A.J. Dillon. I think, if you want to buy him, you're going to have to pay, like, a mid-second in Superflex drafts, probably, like, maybe even a late first in your single QB, right? So at those prices, I think I'd rather just take a swing on some of these wide receivers versus getting someone risky like him. Like, it's a bad time to invest in running backs with questionable situations, because there's a draft, there's free agency. Like, even if Aaron Jones leaves, what happens if they sign someone cheaper? You don't know any of these things. So, like, I don't feel too comfortable. And it's not like A.J. Dillon fans who drafted him are looking to dump him because they saw that one game of, like, that glimpse of what he could be. So you're going to have to, like, pay up to get him. So I think what I think it'll cost to get him is just not going to be worth it for me. So I'm not really pursuing it. But if you can get him for cheap, like a late second, then yeah, fire away. Cause you got to try and land running backs when you can.
And I see the comp thrown around, and I'm with you on A.J. Dillon. This is definitely the worst time to buy, but I see this Eddie Lacy comp get thrown around by some of the mainstream folks. That's partially, Green Bay, partially just the physique. But even Eddie Lacy was commanding 44 targets as a rookie. I don't see that comp being there. Maybe you can see the goal line work being there. And what's to say Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones don't both get re-signed, and then, like you said, we're stuck with a handcuff. I got to imagine at least one of those guys is coming back. I don't see Dillon getting the keys to the kingdom in this backfield. Best case scenario, he's going to be in some sort of timeshare with, like, Jamal Williams or a guy like that, another scat back. And, he's going to see 250 carries and some goal line work, and maybe have a good season or two. Eddie Lacy showed that he can have good seasons. He was an RB1 for 2 years, but you're relying on a lot of things to go right for A.J. Dillon to hit. I'm willing to sell high. If I grabbed him in rookie drafts, this is the time to sell high when his hype is huge. Whereas, like you said, right, so they bring a guy into the draft and now you get nothing for him. Like, give me a guy like Keyshawn Vaughn over A.J. Dillon. What do you think about those two players?
Definitely don't give me Keyshawn Vaughn.
Are you out on Vaughn?
I don't think I was ever in on Vaughn.
Okay, all right.
I thought he was okay, but I thought he was the most overdrafted player. Because, like, if you think back to where he was being drafted, people were taking him in the late first, and at the late first, early second, I'm always smashing T. Higgins and Laviska Shenault. It's like the wide receiver talent's just way better. So, and Keyshawn Vaughn, like, you couldn't get on the field, man. So it doesn't look right. And to be fair, like I was a Ronald Jones hater, right? But he looked like by far and away the best runner on that team
He looked
all
nice.
year. And, we all know Leonard Fournette stinks. And I thought at some point maybe Keyshawn Vaughn would step in there and get some of that passing work, but the guy just couldn't get on the field. So, despite all the people loving his pass protection, which, again, doesn't fucking matter at all.
Yikes.
Um,
Yikes.
like he's just not, I don't know. I'm not excited about Keyshawn Vaughn. Like don't try not to like buy low on like people that on running backs that really face plant in year one. Cause like the track record there is not great and you just don't want to catch that falling knife. So I'm out on Keyshawn Vaughn for sure. Unless you can get him for a fourth, I guess that's like the price where I'd be willing to explore it. But yeah, I'm out on those running backs.
So, and I had this in the show sheet. I already know what the answer is going to be, but when you compare, and I'm just curious to hear your thoughts generally on this player, but a guy like Kareem Hunt, a guy who's in a timeshare, a little on the older end. He's 25 right now. If you're all in on AJ Dillon, right, you think he's going to be one of the say 50-50 split with him and somebody else there on a great offense with the Green Bay. Would you rather have Kareem Hunt right now or AJ Dillon right now?
I think it really depends on the team. So if I'm like a contender, I think I still rather have Kareem Hunt in PPR because as we saw, like Kareem Hunt is pretty damn good with Chubb, right? And I remember there was this debate in the offseason about how Hunt would be better without Chubb than Chubb without Hunt. That was obviously nonsense. But together, Kareem Hunt does provide some decent value, and he provides you some PPR value. And honestly, I think he's a better running back than AJ Dillon as well. So, but if you're like a rebuilder and you want to get someone younger, and you are a AJ Dillon truther, right? Let's say you are AJ Dillon truther. I think you could definitely make that swing. And if anything, you could maybe flip a Kareem Hunt for like an AJ Dillon plus a third round pick. And I know people don't care about third round picks much. I actually do. When it gets to that tier of the draft, it's about volume. So fire as many darts as you can to try and land that jackpot. So those are the types of trades that I would probably explore. But I think in a vacuum, I still prefer Kareem Hunt because Browns run a crap load, and even as part of a committee, he can kind of provide you some decent RB2 flex value.
And he's getting like the Leonard Fournette role in Tampa, right, where he's getting pass catching work and a bunch of goal line work too. So
yeah,
gotta love it there for K Hunt. Let's talk about another 2020 rookie running back, star of the show in 2020, J-Rob, James Robinson, your boy. I think you put out like 7 consecutive episodes on Bunkbed breakdowns of you and Noah just gushing over James Robinson, and I was absolutely on that hype train with you. Pick this guy up in a bunch of leagues, redraft, dynasty. But there's been this ongoing debate. I don't think it's ever going to stop until this guy can do it multiple years in a row. What do you do with J-Rob? Do you flip him for a first? There's this question of, oh, he's undrafted, so now he's going to lose his role as the starting 3-down workhorse. I think at this point, we're all expecting some regression to happen, whether that's another scat back that comes in. They have a lot of draft capital. There's a lot of uncertainty with the coaching staff, how things are going to change in that offense with all the new personnel coming in. Who knows? Maybe Trevor Lawrence is running a ton on the ground, and that's taken away from some of James Robinson's pass catching volume. Like all of that's still built into his ADP and his value, in my opinion. Team bringing it. Oh, breaking news! Like before we got on, like an hour ago, Urban Meyer, coach of the Jags. We can talk about that too, but on J-Rob real quick, where is he for you in terms of like a rankings or a tier?
He's like in that group of running backs. He's like a very high end RB2 for me. He's with like the Aaron Jones, the Josh Jacobs, the Zeke, like Henry, like that type of group is where I have him. And I get the whole undrafted free agent stuff and all that stuff. I just don't think that's the right way to look at it, right? Because people are going to quote undrafted free agent hit rates, right? But here's the problem. Most undrafted free agents don't see the field much. And then once they do see the field, they don't retain a workhorse volume. And when they do retain a workhorse volume, they do not produce the way that he has produced. So like there's just so many gates that he's cleared that I think if you're still using like undrafted free agents as a denominator in calculating like his odds of success, I think it's flawed. Now, does that mean he has no risk? Absolutely not. I've said many times, like I love James Robinson, but I'm fully aware of what the risks are. So here's how I make my decisions. If you're in a rebuilding team, when you are a rebuilding team, you should not be looking to take on risk. You should be only looking to secure good value Forget about your starting lineups. Forget about points. Don't look for like swinging for the fences. Just accumulate good value and just keep building up a portfolio of value. So the best way to do that is to have secure assets. So in that scenario, if you could have flipped James Robinson for like a rookie first plus, which you could have done at any point in the season, that's a good move, right? And I'm totally fine with doing that, like getting a top 4, top 5 pick, because that top 4, top 5 pick, that value is secure until at least after the draft, right? Whereas James Robinson is susceptible to risk of them taking like an early running back. I don't think they will, but that risk is there. But if you're a contending team, right, you want to take a swing on someone like James Robinson, because if you fail, whatever, you missed out on like a first round pick. You could probably still sell him for a second, even if they draft someone, right? Because he's still been productive. So you miss on that edge. But if you hit on an Arian Foster, Priest Mahomes-esque workhorse running back, then that is a league-winning dynasty setup move. So that's how I approach James Robinson. It's about the risk profile that your team can take on, what stage of your rebuild competitiveness you're at. And those are the things that people don't think about. They're just like, wow, James Robinson, he's going to get his job replaced and lose all his value. Like, he might. But, like, frankly, I don't care if that happens, because what I'm looking for is, like, if he hits, then I'm going to make everyone in my league my bitch for, like, the next 2 to 3 years as he's, like, a workhorse, right? So that's how you should think about it, is look at the profile of your team, look at the profile of your league, and then see if James Robinson is someone that fits that profile. In terms of Urban Meyer getting hired, I don't understand too much about Urban Meyer, to be honest. I know he's a super successful, one of the most successful college coaches ever. Not sure how that translates to the NFL. I think it will be more interesting to see who he hires on as his OC. But what we have seen is Urban Meyer is catering to the talent that he has in the teams that he's had. So I'm excited about Trevor Lawrence. I don't think there's any negative you can say about Trevor Lawrence going there, because I like the, a rising tide lifts all boats type of narrative, where Trevor Lawrence is going to make that offense better. They're going to score more. So it's going to be more opportunity for James Robinson. And Trevor Lawrence being mobile is a good thing for running backs. And targets are, he tossed the ball to freaking Travis Etienne, who is by no means an elite pass catcher, a million times in college. So I think that fit will be nice. And Urban obviously runs a ton of RPO at Ohio State. So that's going to open up lanes for James Robinson. So if there's a scenario here where Jags leaves the draft with no running backs in like the top 1 to 2 rounds, you're not going to be able to buy James Robinson for a first-round pick anymore. So that's why, as a contender, you kind of have to make that swing, because you don't want to pay 2 firsts down the line. And if you miss between the difference in the first and the second. It's not that big of a deal. So that's my approach to James Robinson, and that's how I think people should approach it, but not many people do.
I love it, man. I love it. I really don't understand the Urban Meyer move. Like, I don't get it. I don't know what Urban sees outside. Okay, yeah, they have a lot of cap. Maybe I can be, a guy with a lot of pull there that can make a lot of decisions. I can choose my GM. Like, I get it from that perspective of, like, I'm going to have a lot of power, but I don't know why I'd want to come back specifically to the Jacksonville Jaguars unless, I don't know what that contract looks like. Maybe it's insane.
It's a good contract. I think it's one of the better landing spots, at least for a GM. It's one of the top landing spots. I don't know about coach. But, you're getting what everyone is saying is the best quarterback prospect of all time, right? Or since John Elway, since Peyton Manning, whatever. Take your pick, a Hall of Famer. So you got that going for you. And they got a shitload of cap space, right? And they're loaded with draft picks. And if you think about it, he's not coached for a couple of years, but he's pretty plugged into the college scene. So I'm sure he has his views on who this incoming talent class is for 2021, 2022. So with those draft picks, with that ammo, I think – for him, it's like, hey, I get to build this team and help build this roster and run it how I see fit. So I think I can see why he went there. Also, no taxes. That's always a bonus.
It kind of reminds me of the John Gruden situation in a way. Guy hasn't coached for a while, comes back, going to have a ton of hype. We'll see if he delivers on that, but it's certainly going to be exciting. And everything you just said there got me so excited for that roster where I have Laviska Shenault and DJ Chark coming off a rebuild. So,
yeah,
loving that.
Laviska's going to be exciting, man. If you think back to Urban Meyer, he had Percy Harvin, right? And he had Curtis Samuel in that hybrid type of role, and Laviska Shenault's like a jacked up version of them. So I'm super, super excited to see what he does with Laviska Shenault. You could be looking at 800 yards receiving, 800 yards rushing, 700 yards rushing, with double-digit TDs type of move for Laviska. So if you haven't yet, I've pumped up Laviska for a long time, and if you haven't yet, you should be acquiring him. It's going to be exciting.
So we're all in the Laviska hype train. But let's talk about two rookie wide receivers that disappointed. I think both for very different reasons, but both have the first round draft capital. And in Dynasty, there's always this concept of third year is the breakout for wide receivers. They take more time to develop. Before this season, which was, like we already talked about, right? Historic class, some of the best rookies that we've ever seen play in the NFL. We got Jay Jets breaking the records that Randy Moss was setting. But before this season, there were only 9 out of 182 rookie wide receivers that ever finished in the top 24 in PPR leagues. You take that into consideration. Maybe these guys didn't stink as much as everybody says, but what are you doing right now? We'll start with Ruggs. The other one is Jalen Reagor. Henry Ruggs, Jalen Reagor. If you're a holder of them in Dynasty, what are you doing? Is it just hold because you're not getting anything left? Or are you going with those guys?
I mean, you should not have drafted Henry Ruggs, period. So, I said that a while back. But if you did draft Henry Ruggs, I think you should be trying to get out, right? And, a lot of people, Dynasty and, human beings are just prisoners of sunk cost fallacy. They cannot get over how much they invested in a player. And, that is the number one downfall of people in Dynasty is, one is take lock and two is that. To me, you shouldn't be worried about what you invest in Henry Ruggs. You invested a first-round pick. That was a fucking mistake. Move on, right? That mistake is not going to be fixed. What you should be looking at is, if I don't move on from him now, what will I get? A year from now, 2 years from now. A year from now, 2 years now, you might drop him from your roster. So if you can get a late second, I think that's an easy accept because I would rather re-roll on this wide receiver class. If you can get even a couple thirds, right, in Superflex, I think that's fine because it's going to add you a couple darts. It's going to allow you to move up and down in the draft. It's going to give you more flexibility. You never know who falls, and interesting players always fall, right? You got Chase Claypool's, Antonio Gibson's. These are outliers, of course, but, people love their guys, and people love spending time on sleepers. I don't know anybody that, people waste so much time on identifying sleepers. So when those sleepers get into the draft, they're going to want to get them. So having those third-round picks is going to be valuable. So that's what I'd be doing with Henry Ruggs. I'd be moving on because, I get the whole 3-year thing, but the 3-year thing is based on a progression, right? And you don't want guys falling on their face in year one. That's not good for future. And Henry Ruggs and Jalen Reagor as well, to a degree, absolutely fell on their face. But the fact that, I didn't think Henry Ruggs would be good. He was not productive in college, and shocker, he was not productive in the NFL. I think those two red flags. He's progressing exactly as someone with his profile is progressing, and where that goes 2 years down the line is literally not on your roster. So you should be trying to get whatever you can.
The John Ross progression, the Dorial Green Beckham progression.
Yeah.
All these guys, right? And we didn't see Ruggs get more than 5 targets in a game all season. He averaged 2 receptions a game. At least the one positive with him was that the ADOT was there.
Mm-hmm.
It was the second highest in the league, but those weren't accurate targets. And he wasn't able to go up and high point on defenders. He had to burn them purely with just speed to get separation, which I actually think he did. I want to spend a little bit more time breaking down that film on Ruggs, but yeah, I'm with you, man. The wheels fell off for Henry Ruggs. If you were in on him, it was just a hype play from Alabama in the 40 time. There's a lot more that goes into it than just those two factors. And that's why I've been a big fan of Jalen Reagor. He was my guy just like Cam Akers. Really disappointed to see how this year went. There was turmoil in the offense. Reagor never once had a game with over 60 yards, only caught 50% of his targets. At least, though, he has the college profile. At least he has that skill set that he showed in college to kind of fall back on. He demanded a huge target share in college, broke out super early in his career. That gives you more hope. With Reagor, are you buying like I am?
I'm not buying. I'm just holding a bit. And if I get a chance and someone's willing to give me a late first for him, I'll absolutely dump him and re-roll. Just like I said, I don't like it when guys fall on their face year one. If they had something, that'd be good. I think, with Reagor, the problem is he got hurt too. That's the thing. It's but it's the exact same thing that happened to N'Keal Harry. They got hurt early, and then they just weren't able to kind of recover. And when I was watching him, he had some decent plays, and there were some other plays where he got missed on, but that kind of happens to everyone. So I don't really like to go that route. It's oh wow, look at Jalen Hurts missed him on these couple bombs. You watch that film for anyone, it's gonna happen. So I think, if you can re-roll for someone in this class, if I can get a De'Ami Brown, I'm instantly accepting. And De'Ami Brown you can get in the early second of Superflex drafts, so instantly smashing on that. If I get a Seth Williams, I'm smashing on that. Like a lot of these wide receivers in this incoming class, I really like as well. So, like I said, if you can re-roll, absolutely do it. I'm not really going out and on like a buy crusade because I already have a lot of him because I was in on him as well. So I'm just gonna like hold some and then try and re-roll a couple if I can.
I think it's a good way to approach as well. I think folks are lumping in Rager into that Ruggs category, which for me, those guys are not very similar at all.
No,
So I'm willing to bet on Rager. I found situations where I've been being able to get him extremely low. I've been able to flip a Ruggs for Rager.
okay, yeah. I mean, you can get that price. You accept it all day. I'm just like not really willing to pay like an early second or a first to get them. And some people, if they are real truthers, like they're probably gonna hang on as well. So, but if you can get it for Ruggs, like if you can get them for Ruggs, I would do it. Right? If you can get them, I mean, Van Jefferson's worst draft pick of all time. I don't know if you get it for him, but some of these other lower wide receivers definitely do it. If you can get them for like a late second, maybe like a couple thirds, I would do it. But short of that, I'm just gonna re-roll the early second round picks.
Would you move Chase Claypool for Rager plus?
Depends what the plus is. But like, dude, Claypool was one of my biggest misses. Like I just did not see this coming, and he was pretty damn impressive. So I love seeing early production at young wide receivers. So it would have to be a pretty penny for me to move off him for Rager plus. Maybe like Rager plus like an early second round pick in Superflex, something like that. That'd make me consider it. But other than that, I think there's a pretty big gap between what Claypool did and what Rager has done.
So you hinted at some of the stud wide receivers in this 2021 class. We've talked about how it could, by all intents and purposes, be a better class. It looks like a better class on paper than the 2020 class. And look, let's settle this once and for all. Let's get Mike Liu's stance on this. Who is your wide receiver one in the 2021 class? Is it Ja'Marr Chase or is it Devonta Smith? And if it is Ja'Marr Chase, how far apart are Chase and Smith for you?
It's Ja'Marr Chase. I really feel like this shouldn't be that hot of a discussion, and I get it. Like Devonta Smith had a baller year. He had a fantastic year. Kudos to him. Won the Heisman. Fantastic, right? Doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter that you won the Heisman. Like other than accomplishment, and kudos to him as a player. From a fantasy perspective, I couldn't care less if he won the Heisman because there's like nothing to show me that Heisman winners actually correlate with fantasy production, which is what we care about, right? And there's plenty to show us that producing at an early age does correlate to fantasy success. And what Ja'Marr Chase did as a true sophomore is way more impressive to me than what Devonta Smith has done. And I'm not saying Devonta Smith is a bad player, right? Even if you absolutely believe that Devonta Smith is a freaking stud, and that's your true belief, why would you take him over Ja'Marr Chase, who had an equally impressive season, younger and is bigger and like is going to be an early declare and is going to be younger when he enters the NFL? And honestly, by all accounts, is also an absolute fucking stud, right? So even if you believe that these two are incredibly, incredibly talented, I'm just going to always take the risk mitigating one and just pick Ja'Marr Chase. And I think I have Ja'Marr Chase in his own tier. He's in a tier 1 wide receiver by himself. That's it. I don't have anyone else in there. And the gap between him and Devonta Smith for me is actually pretty big. Like I have Rashad Bateman as my wide receiver 2. I got Rondale Moore. I got Seth Williams in there. I got De'Ami Brown in there. So there's a bunch of wide receivers that I'm very interested in. And even though I have Devonta Smith ranked lower, right? But I don't really think it matters because like someone in your league is going to have him ranked as their wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. So basically the way I have my rankings done is like, I'm just not going to have any Devonta Smith. And if he hits, like, dude, fantastic. Good for him. He by all means, by my eyes, looks like a phenomenal wide receiver, right? But I'm just not going to take that risk when I'm in a class with so many other guys that are also, by my account, pretty damn good. So that's kind of where I'm at with that debate. And I don't really want to argue or shit on anyone. Like if you have Devonta Smith as your wide receiver 1, like kudos to you, man. Maybe, you have a process that kind of works there. But for me, as part of my process, there's red flags there when there is no red flags with Ja'Marr Chase. I'm just going to go with the guy that doesn't have any.
I'm with you 100%, man. It's Chase. It's a massive gap. And then it's a bunch of other really good players. I'm sold on Rashad Bateman. You brought his name up a while back when we did that pod last year after the 2019 draft. did a little digging into this guy. I was like, damn, he's going to produce at the next level. So I'm with you on Bateman as well. He's in my, I don't know if he's my 2 right now. I haven't actually, sat down and gone through all the rankings, but Smith certainly isn't the 2 for me. And I love that because that the hype is going to get so real with him that you're going to be able to get even more value later on in those rookie drafts.
Yep.
I mean, Jamar Chase did exactly what Smith did just a year ago, right? Yep. So I'm with you 100% there. Last topic I want to touch on here, the running backs in the 2021 class. And I think we can revisit all these guys after we know some landing spots. After the draft, we'll love to have you back on the show, Mike. Always love having you on. But as far as we can really make this top 5 running backs in this class. The question I wrote down, right, who's the RB3? Because I think for most people, and maybe you got a hot take, something coming from out of left field here, most folks have Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, 1 and 2. I've seen a few guys more on the film side of things lean with Etienne over Najee Harris. I'm a Harris guy through and through. Think the kid's an absolute monster. I have the 103 in my home Dynasty league. I'm holding that, saying, look, this is either going to be Fields or Harris, and I'm going to be stoked with either one. But who is your 3? Is it Javonte Williams? Is it Kenneth Gainwell? Is it maybe a Trey Sermon, a Chuba Hubbard? Hubbard's kind of fallen off, but who do you got there as your 3?
Yeah, I got Javonte Williams, and he might be my 2, to be quite honest, because here's the thing. It depends when you're drafting, right? Most people draft after the NFL draft because they're not degenerates, but I myself have leagues where I draft players before the NFL draft does. It's a little bit of a gamble, but it's also a lot of fun. So in that scenario, I think Javonte Williams is more, how do I put it? He's a little bit more landing spot proof. He kind of profiles as that 3-down back. He's a freaking tackle breaking monster. I want to see how he tests, obviously. If he goes out there and pulls an Elijah Holyfield and runs like a 4.7, I'm not interested anymore. But assuming he goes out there and runs like a 4.5, right? I think I am interested because if I know what Travis Etienne lands, that'll be a very easy decision for me to make. Because Travis Etienne, I think he's a great fit for like a San Francisco where you have like Kyle Shanahan scheming him a couple of open lanes, because you point him into open lane, like he's gone. That is the type of player that Travis Etienne is. But if you put him on like the New York Jets, I'm not as interested, right? Because, 1, they're not going to be a great team. And 2, like, I don't know how much space he's really going to have to work with. Whereas like a Javonte Williams, I feel like you can kind of plug him into a lot of offenses and, kind of like a Chris Carson, right? He's a pretty damn physical runner. He's going to be a good runner. So I'm interested in him there. So I actually have him as my RB2 right now, not knowing any landing spots, just because I feel like he can land in a lot of good places and still be really good. Whereas Travis Etienne, I think, is one of the most landing spot dependent players in this entire draft. Like I have him at 1.05 right now in a super flex league after the top 2 quarterbacks and the top 2 wide receivers. But like, actually, no, I actually moved Jamar Chase ahead of him. So I have him at 1.06, but I could see him easily sliding way down to like the back half of the first if he lands in a shitty situation and we get like a Trey Lance and Zach Wilson that has like good draft capital. So I think he's super, super volatile. But I do love the player. If he lands in the right spot, he could also be the running back 1. So it's kind of that's the type of player that Travis Etienne is.
What do you think about Steelers as a landing spot for either of these guys? I've been seeing Najee to the Steelers. I think for most fantasy players, that's a dream landing spot scenario because he's going to get keys to the kingdom and can have the Le'Veon Bell role. But for either of these guys, whoever lands in Pittsburgh, like if Etienne lands there, are you willing to put him at the same level, if not higher than Najee?
Not really, because I don't think the Steelers is as lucrative as people think it is. I mean, their offensive line is battered. I mean, this year we saw Connor put up a couple good games, but I don't think it's as good of a landing spot as people make it out to be, basically. I mean, we don't know what Big Ben's going to do. We don't know how good that team's going to be. They're mostly like a pass-first offense. So I'm not so sure that's the best spot. I think Najee can land anywhere. I don't care where he lands. He's going to be dope. I really want to see him land in like a Miami, maybe they can pick him, but I don't know if it'll last that long. So anywhere he goes with like a workhorse role, I'm excited.
Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta, like anywhere where you can take over, I think Najee Harris will be fantastic because he's a true 3-down threat. But Travis Etienne, like I wouldn't be that excited about him landing in the Steelers, to be honest, because like I don't even think he's like really a workhorse. I would want to see him land like in a Ideally, I think he's going to be in a committee no matter what, but you want to see him land on a high powering offense committee, right? Like, let's say like Aaron Jones leaves, right? And then he lands in Green Bay. That'd be exciting for me. Green Bay has a top offensive line. He would be a great compliment to someone like an AJ Dillon. That'll cap the ceiling a bit, probably on the
Ooh.
T side. But like if Travis Etienne landed there, AJ Dillon would be dead. But from a first
He's already
one,
dead.
two down grinder. But Travis Etienne landing in that type of offense with that type of role is exciting. But that's why I said like he's a very, very volatile asset, because if he doesn't land in something like that, I'm very, very nervous about what he's going to do.
Man, now you got me thinking about this Thunder and Lightning with AJ Dillon and Travis Etienne. They're going to build in Green Bay next year. I'm pretty hyped. So you got your top three: Harris, Etienne, Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the other two there? We don't have to get too deep into these names here, but just curious who you have kind of rounding out that top five.
Yeah, so the funny thing is, like, those are the only three I have in the first round. Those are the only three I have in, like, my top 20 players. Like, after those three go, I'm, like, basically not even really looking at running backs until much, much later.
The
But
hype on Gainwell right now is insane on Twitter. Guys are gassing this kid up every single day. I see a new thread. We're breaking down his film, how explosive he is. But I'm with you, man. He's just undersized. Like, I don't see it. I don't see him as a guy in that top three.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I do think he's a really good player, but again, you have a player that is so landing spot dependent, because he is for sure not a workhorse back, at least out the gate. He's have to play himself into that role. So you're looking at like a committee, maybe third down role. He's a fantastic player, obviously, because he relegated Antonio Gibson to the bench, right? And this guy is an absolute stud. I just don't know where he's going to land. So that's like the type of risk that I don't really want to take. So he's interesting. Another name that's kind of catching my attention is Ramondre Stevenson from Oklahoma. He's a huge dude. He's like 250. So I'm kind of interested to see how he tests out. But he looked pretty good in the limited action they did get, and he does have some receiving chops as well. So he kind of has that profile size. Now, is he going to get the draft capital? I'm not sure. But that's someone I'm interested in. And then one last name I'll kind of throw out there is Jamar Jefferson. I think he's another interesting name that I have in that next group of guys. But again, he's not someone that I have in my top five, and definitely not someone I'm looking to spend a first round rookie pick on.
So 2 points. Everything you just said there it brought two things to my mind. One, Buffalo, another really interesting landing spot. I don't know if they want to get burned again after the Singletary Moss experience. Like, are they just going to keep churning through these running backs? What are your thoughts on them as a landing spot?
I mean, like I joked, I tweeted on when the game was happening, but I said, like, dude, Buffalo should just never run the ball again unless they're running with Josh Allen, because their running backs are just not very good.
Josh Allen is their RB1 right now.
Yeah, he's by far their RB1. And funnily enough, after I tweeted that, their next drive was like 4 passes and 2 Josh Allen runs. So, it's they're the only weakness in their offense is the running game. If they do get someone good, though, I think that can be a very lucrative spot, because Josh Allen obviously does vulture a lot of stuff, but it is a very high scoring and high powered offense. It's just that, like, Devin Singletary has never been it, and Zach Moss definitely ain't it. So I think, if you get like but here's what I think, though. I think what's more likely, though, is they just friggin' like pony up and like sign like a vet, like a Chris Carson or something, and just get him over there and just grind it out, kind of like what they did with LaShawn McCoy. I think that's the more likely path versus them actually spending draft capital on a running back. If I had to guess, that would be my guess.
I gotta feel like they just feel so burned about drafting running backs right now. Whatever they're doing to evaluate guys, like, it's not working. You all need to change it up. So I could definitely see them signing a veteran. Last thing here, I haven't heard too much talk about this, but it has been floated out there by a couple different sources. There is a non-zero chance that we don't get a combine, we don't get pro days this year, thanks to freaking COVID. So. How do you think that impacts a lot of things, or impacts, like, obviously, like, we both want a lot of draft picks, especially in rebuild. Like, there's still tons of value there. I think we know which guys are the guys. But how do you think that plays out if there is no combine? We don't get to see these guys test. You devalue like late second round and third round picks.
I do not, because like combine, I mean, I call it the Under Olympics, because that's really what it is. It's I think people tend to like overweight it a lot. I mean, I use it more as like a cross off, like a red flag. Like a running back goes out there and runs like a 4.7 4.8. I'm very not interested because the history there is not great. But if they run anywhere between like a almost like a 4.3 or like a 4.6, like it doesn't really change my evaluation of them that much. So I think what's going to happen though is like it takes away a sell window for your rookie picks because the best sell windows is immediately after the combine, immediately after the draft when hype is the highest. So from that perspective, it's quite disappointing. But if you know what you're looking for, I mean, those second round picks to me become more valuable because now you have guys who actually look at the advanced stats and know what matters for a wide receiver. It's not that they run a 4.4 or a 4.3 or a 4.2. It's how productive they were in college, right? So those are the things I'm looking at. You know, combine for wide receivers, especially, like really don't matter to me at all unless they're literally going out there and running like 4.9s and 5.0s where you're just like, damn, this guy is not going to make it. Like that's where I kind of use combine. Like I never come out of combine. I'm like, wow, this guy blew me away in the combine. Let me move him up my ranks. What I do is I say, wow, this guy that I like stunk. Let me move him down. That's my reaction for combine. It's never, nobody comes out of the combine. I'm like, holy shit, like AJ Dillon, you were amazing in the combine. I'm going to definitely move you up. That's not really my approach for the most part.
So going off what you just said there, Jamar Chase should not be present at the combine. Keep that stock as high as possible because
Yeah.
it can only go down, right?
Yeah, I mean, Jamar Chase could not do the. I mean, look at what people did to T. Higgins for not doing the combine and how foolish that was. Like people are like, oh my god, he didn't run a 40. Oh my god, he didn't lift weights. Oh my god, he didn't jump out of the gym. Like oh my god, in his pro day, he only ran like a 4.6. Like in the end, it doesn't fucking matter because the guy produced and he's a good player, right? So if all that thing can do is like devalue stuff. So I would love to see the combine. Don't get me wrong. When the combine happens, I watch it because it's fun. I love to see who's the fastest 40 guy. I love to see who's jumping out of the gym, right? I love to see all those things. But like in terms of prospect evaluation, a combine is a very, very small portion of my weighting. If at all, like I said, it's more of like a filter to just filter out really bad athletes like the Zach Mosses of the world, for example.
I want it to happen so all the 40-time truthers just overvalue these guys. We get more Henry
Yeah.
Ruggs up there.
Yeah.
Like I feel like last year Laviska Shenault, because he was a little bit banged up at the combine, hurt his
Yeah.
stock to a lot of people. I don't think it necessarily hurt his draft stock, but
Yeah.
for
Oh, it definitely hurt his draft stock. If he came out at that size and he ran like a 4.4, 4.5, which I thought he would run, but he put on that freaking parachute and ran that sprint instead, I think he would have gone higher, to be honest. Because
do
like
you remember where
NFL, the
he
reason
ended up going?
yeah, he won in the second round. Back by the second
210,
round. Yeah,
210.
when he landed in Jacksonville, I was hyped. As soon as I saw the landing, I'm like, I'm all in on the Shenault. This is the perfect landing spot and for his skill set. But like the reason why the combine matters is because the NFL cares about it, and the NFL is not rational. So if you make that understanding, that's the reason why it matters. Like a running back because they run a 4.7 doesn't necessarily mean they suck. It just means the NFL is like, wow, that guy sucks. I'm not giving the opportunity. So that's why the combine matters to that degree, right? That's why I use it as an eliminator and not like a propeller.
Awesome, man. Well, this discussion was incredible. Learned a ton here. Love getting your thoughts as a avid fan of what you guys are doing. Again, guys, if you like what you heard here, go over to Bunkbed Breakdowns. Give those guys a sub. They're all in on the Dynasty game. Just dropping, like, these guys are consistent. I'm seeing, 4 videos a week, something like that. One's an hour. We get the narrative. We get Market Watch Mondays where we go through the strategy, how to know if you're rebuilding, you're a contender, all that stuff, man. Mike, I appreciate everything you're doing. Anything else before we sign off here? Anything? I know, you didn't have anything to plug, but just any parting words.
No, man, just have fun with it, dude. Like I know this is your first offseason in Dynasty, and for those of you out there that are thinking about dipping your toes in, make sure you guys just tune into their show. And it's always interesting. Like I've been playing, I'm in like my 3rd year now, so my perspective will be different from your perspective. But like the learning experience in the first year is really cool. But the best part of Dynasty, man, if you stick with it, is year 2 and year 3, because that's when your dynasties come together. That's when I post my team and the people, all the like jokes are coming like, oh, is that an 8-team league? Yada yada yada. No, that's like through 2-3 years of net positive trades. That's how you build dynasties and build monsters. You don't have that chance in redraft because you only get so many first round picks, and not every 8th round pick become the first round pick the following year, right? But in Dynasty, like I have teams with like 7 first round picks. Like if you look at the startup
Mike, real
draft,
quick, Could you read us off like one of these stud,
Sure.
just purebred every year winning rosters that you have going on right now?
Yeah, so I did a productive struggle last year in a draft, and I just accumulated a bunch of draft picks to go all in on the 2020 draft. And this year was like the first year I'm contending in year two, and I won the league and came in first. But here's my roster, right? It's a super flex league. It's 12 team. It's PPR and 0.25 points per carry, and it's a tight end premium. But you don't have to start a tight end. You can start a wide receiver, or a tight end. So here's my roster. I got Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts as my quarterbacks. I got Aaron Jones, JK Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, and Saquon Barkley and James Robinson as my running backs. And then for my wide receivers, I got A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, and Will Fuller and Michael Thomas. And I still have a 1.09 and 2.01 in this year's rookie draft. So like that team is going to dominate. I might not win every year, but for the next 3 to 5 years, if I just manage it the right way, I'm going to dominate that league and nobody's going to have a chance because I still have rookie picks. So like that's the type of team you can build in a dynasty. You have no shot of doing that in redraft ever. So that's the beauty of dynasty. You stick with it for 2 to 3 years and you really just hone in on the game and just hone in on your craft and just really like trading is how it's built. Like the draft is great, but the draft doesn't win you anything. Trading is how it's won. Pay attention to how to exit and enter players. Don't be the guy that like drafts a team and then forgets about it. That's why I don't care about longevity. Like I care about, player values. But this is the time, man. Like the dynasty is the only place you can do it. And the amount of satisfaction that you feel when you build a team like that is unmatched by any other format of fantasy. So that's why you got to try it. So I got to stick with it. And, if you fuck up in your first year, do not get discouraged. I was horrible in my first year as a dynasty player, right? But you learn as you go along the way and as you play more leagues, as you listen to like podcasts and then pick out the guys that you really trust, 2 or 3 guys that you want to go for, so maybe that's you guys, Stef and a couple others. Don't like get too flooded with information because there's a lot of shitty content out there. So don't get flooded by that, but just pick up guys you trust. And most importantly, like do your own research, man. It's your own league. Right? Don't blame an analyst for your decision, right? That's you. Don't be a coward. Like just take ownership of your decision and do the research yourself and don't blame anyone else because when you fuck it up, you know what? Look, I fuck it up and I want to learn from that. But when you hit it, it's all you, right? You take credit for all that. And it's like a very satisfying and rewarding process.
All dynasty players are analysts in their own way. There you have it, folks. Mike laying the hammer down. Here's to Laviska Shenault 2021, and we'll see y'all next time. Peace.